This video is for AQA Business Studies, and it's looking at the 25 mark questions. So towards the end of your paper, when you've got that choice between different 25 mark questions, what this video will do is look at how to attempt it and to make sure that you're prepared for the style questions. So to start off with, I'm just going to give you some advice. So the first piece of advice, I think one of the most crucial pieces of advice, is to ensure that you have interpreted the question correctly. Now, the question can have many components, so therefore it's really crucial that you do really understand what the question's actually asking. Now, I think this is probably the one thing that really punishes students, and students, if they don't interpret the question, then they're going to be limited on their marks, and you can't really be able to you can't afford to limit your marks on this question. So I would recommend ICF. Instruction: what is the command words? Context: is there a specific industry? If not, have you actually researched enough possible contextual examples relating to a range of different functional areas and topics to look at? That could be in terms of looking at different markets, looking at different industries, looking at different types of businesses. Just make sure that you're in a position to offer these examples. And focus, what is the topic? Which unit does it relate to? Which functional area does it relate to? Does it relate to more than one, which is quite common in these 25 mark questions? If so, make sure you do cover that. Right, other piece of advice is to always plan your answer. So after you've carried out ICF, what I would do is in just maybe the top of the page or the column is just bullet point a set structure that you're going to use in answering the question. You will have time to do so, and it's going to make a massive difference to your answer. It's obvious to tell the students who have structured it and planned their structure to the students who've kind of just gone off on one and just tried to answer it to the best of their ability. The structure will massively help. Now, obviously, it's really important to recognise what your counter-argument is going to be and what counter-argument is actually needed within the question, because balance is absolutely crucial. I recommend 2 to 3 analytical points, but if time is not on your side, then you definitely need 2 points. 2 points of balance, counter-arguments. Sometimes the questions are not the easiest to interpret, and sometimes it's quite hard to recognise what the counter-argument should be, and that's why by planning, it'll massively help. If you do worry about time management, I do think that if you set aside a little bit of time to plan, it'll actually make you much more productive when writing your answer, and that should speed up your time management. Now, the examiner needs to know that the student understands the key aspects of the question, and again, this can be done via introduction in the first few sentences, but I'll show this when we look at the model answer. Within your analytical points, detail and development is absolutely essential. You need those logical chains of arguments. So think about, what is your point? Is it valid? How does it relate to what the question is asking? How have you explained that it is valid and it links? What evidence are you going to be using within your points? How is this evidence going to be used to support your point? Are you simply storytelling, or actually are you being concise and linking it to the point that you're making? In terms of the evidence, usually these 25 mark questions, you're going to have to bring your own evidence in. So what industry business examples can you provide to help your analysis? One example being, if it's, for example, strategic drift, you could bring in evidence of Blockbuster or of Kodak, but you have to have these examples ready. Your analysis: ensure your point is developed. What would this point lead to, and how would it link to what the question is asking? What would it ultimately mean? Have you used analytical language? So have you said, for example, how significant it would be to the point or to what the question is asking? Have you embedded theory? Now, theory is crucial. With the new AQA spec, they've brought in and introduced lots and lots of different theories, and they want you to utilise them and use them within your work. So not only are you bringing in real-life examples from business environment, but you're also bringing in theories to support your point further, and it will make your writing so much more sophisticated. So, for example, if you're looking at international strategy, you can bring in Bartlett and Goschel. If you're looking at the HR workforce in terms of becoming global, you can look at Hofstede and so on. What does it depend upon? Will your point always be the case? Does it depend upon the market, the industry, the firm? And again, what this does It gives you an opportunity to provide contextual examples, but it also helps you to evaluate. Now, the main body of your evaluation should come at the end of your answer, but you should be evaluating throughout as well. And it depends upon, it helps you to look at the bigger picture, helps you to place weight on this argument, and it helps you to pick up those evaluative marks. So speaking of evaluation, this framework will help. Students do tend to struggle with evaluation. It's often repetitive and limited. But what is your answer? What is the decision that you're making, and why is this decision more important than the other argument that you made earlier? So you have to place weight on this decision. Is there any shortcomings of your opinion? Is there any problems with the decision that you've made? Any scenarios where maybe it wouldn't be possible, it wouldn't be plausible? If so, what could be the solutions? And finally, what does the decision depend upon? Now, do not just do one sentence for you depend upon, because it's going to be pointless otherwise. It needs to be really thought through. When practicing these 25 markers, what I would do is I'd plan it out first and I'd practice. I've created a quick little template that you could use. So first of all, what I would do is I'd get the question and I'd kind of break the question down in my own words. So summarising, what is the question actually asking? Then I'd do my ICF, so what my instruction, what my context, what my focus is. I'd create a definition in terms of what I'm going to use, so what is the key focuses within the question, and do a technical definition for them. And then I'll just bullet point evidence for, evidence against, to try and create that quick idea of how you could structure your assignment. And then have an analytical and evaluative framework here. So, for example, make sure that you got your point 1, your point 2, your point 3 in your evaluation. So you could look at, obviously, with all the points that you've already considered, you have to use them all. Be selective, get the priority ones, get the ones with most weight. Point 1 is advantage, disadvantage. What is your reason? Why is it a point? What's valid about it? What's the point depend upon? And again, you could even do developmental errors in terms of logical chains of arguments. Point 2 to do the same. What I would recommend is point 1 and point 2 contrast in terms of counter arguments. And then point 3 maybe has that, you could have that as your link up towards your evaluation in terms of what direction you're going, what you're leading towards. And again, the framework is all there. So create a planning sheet. You can base it on this. It's completely up to you. But I would definitely plan out your 25 marker before writing it. Now, I don't expect you to use this type of planning framework in your exam because you wouldn't have it. In the exam, it would be much more simplified in like a column of your paper. So this is the mark grid that you'd get in a mark scheme for a 25 mark, and I'm just focusing on level 3 to level 5. Now if we look at level 5, I've highlighted some key points which kind of relate to what I've just mentioned in my advice. For example, it's fully focus on the key demands of the question. If you don't answer what the question is asking, you're not really going to get into level 3 and beyond, and you've got no chance of getting to level 5. Again, demonstrates a depth and range of knowledge that relates to obviously your writing being as technical as possible and bringing in theories to kind of help support that. Demonstrates analysis throughout, which is well developed, to think about those logical chains of arguments. What is this point? Why is this a point? What does this point lead to? What will it ultimately mean? How does it relate to different functional areas? How does it, so on, okay? Context, so you can't get into level 5 without using some form of context, even if that's looking at different business sizes, different industries. You might not even need to bring in a specific real-life example, but you need to show that you have an understanding of how it applies to different scenarios. And again, balance, making sure you've got a counter-argument, and makes judgments or provide solutions. Now, if you use the framework for the evaluation, you'll do both. And, as I've said, the main body of your evaluation should come at the end, so it follows on from your analysis. Now, this was an exam question that was in the mock. So in the last few decades, UK businesses have generally become more global and more service-based. To what extent do you think that as a result of these changes, the ability of a UK business to compete successfully will increasingly depend on how well it makes its human resource decisions? Justify your answer. So I've highlighted my ICF, what I believe is key within the question. I know it's to do with business that is becoming global and more service-based. They're asking me for my opinion, so I know I need to make some form of decision. I know it's to do with UK businesses competing successfully, obviously that's globally, and I know it relates to the functional area of HR, but now I need to plan. What does this actually mean? Well, obviously it means one argument is going to be that HR decisions are absolutely crucial. The other counter-argument, it's not necessarily saying that HR decisions won't be crucial, but it might look at, well, what other areas, what other functional areas might just be as important or even more important. I'm not going to go through my whole answer. You can pause it, you can have a look at it, but this is the beginning stages. You can start to see, obviously I need to move on to the next page, but you can see how within this introduction, it's obvious that I understand the demands of the question. So again, you can pause it, you can have a read, have a look at it, have a look at the points that I've made, have a look at how I develop it, have a look at how I bring in some other points to it, and theories and context, etc. So you can see here how I've brought in Hofstede's cultural dimensions as a theory, but I've used IBM as a context related to that theory. I've picked up key theories from it, such as power distances. I've brought in Bartlett and Goschel's internationalism model as well, talking about local responsiveness, and I use the example of HSBC. Think about different markets such as the Middle East, etc. Thinking about how it could be decentralized to a certain degree, or it could be centralized to a certain degree, but then based on regions. So now I'm moving on to my counter-argument. However, is human resource management decisions the most important function when trying to boost competitiveness? Could other functional areas such as marketing be just as important? And that allows me to go into my counter-argument. I've made sure that I've linked to the service sector, and all the examples that I've used, even HSBC in my previous argument, was to do the service sector, because that's what the question's asking. So, in terms of my conclusion, by saying in judgment to the question, I'm telling the examiner, I'm signposting to the examiner, this is where my conclusion starts. Just to make it easier, you have to think the examiner is marking hundreds of scripts. By making the examiner's job easier, I'm not saying it'll favour your assignment, but it'll make them follow it much easier, and therefore make it easy for them to award the marks. Now, it hasn't showed in this software, but what I have done with this is I've left lines between paragraphs, but it hasn't done it within the software. But I'd recommend that as well, just to make it easier for the examiner to see where the structure of the different points.